Hello and a very warm welcome to this very special broadcast on the G20 summit that's underway in Osaka in Japan. In this special edition focusing on India's world, we take a look at what India has been able to achieve in the two meetings, the convergences and divergences, and the way ahead in a world that is rapidly changing. And joining me on the show today is Professor S.D. Muni, who's a distinguished fellow at IDSA, former diplomat and an expert on the South Asia region. Here with me in the studio is Satish Jacob, senior journalist. Harshvi Pant will be joining me. He's the Director of Studies and Head of Strategic Studies Program at the Observer Research Foundation, and Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, Dean and Professor at the Jindal School of International Studies. Dr. Chaulia, a quick perspective from you. While Harsh says there is so much to be taken advantage of, given the time right now, but with the geopolitical situation changing rapidly, for India the choices are increasingly becoming binary, either this or that. And it's not by choice, be it the oil import or the defense deal with Russia or Trump's diktat on Huawei, the deal with China, or dealing with Trump's protectionism and unilateralism. Are we able to balance this out now and in the years to come?
It is difficult to have the cake and eat it too in world politics, no doubt about it. It's like threading the needle or, walking the tightrope, to use some metaphors. But I think Prime Minister Modi knows that Indian interests lie in, extracting the most from multiple partners. And therefore, these trilaterals you're mentioning, also the BRICS informal happened on the sidelines of G20. We are, basically hitting all the, right chords, because we need, multiple things from different players. So I think it's not a question of either or. I remember Mr. Jaishankar was asked, isn't it time to take a strong position either in favor of China or the United States, because they are now engaged in some big global ideological struggle? And Jaishankar smartly replied, yes, it is time to take a side, and we will take India's side. So, I think it's very important. In the past, Sana, we used to be called a swing state. Either we oscillate towards China or towards the United States, or in the past towards the Soviet Union or the United States. But now I think this is a new India of Narendra Modi, and we are basically talking about India as a power center in itself, or as a pole that upholds the world order in itself, rather than just being a swing state. So we are not going to, crown either China or the United States. We are looking for our own interests, and that is being reflected in these somewhat, conflicting groupings of which we are part of. So JAI for Indo-Pacific balance of power and for stability and to prevent Chinese hegemony, but RIC, Russia, India, China, because we want a multipolar order rather than a unipolar one. So in a way, you can argue
but that's a choice, right? But there is definitely conflicting interests when you're part of these two trilateral groupings. And I want to quickly get into Professor S.D. Muni. Dr. Chaulia, do you see that ever since Prime Minister Modi perhaps has taken over, there's also been a talk of these informal summits, and we're going to see some more towards the end of the year. How much do you think a personal connect at that level has helped these countries like India, China, Russia? I can't say about Donald Trump, but what sort of role do these informal summits play? Do you see a result of these somewhere when these big summits happen?
Yeah, Sana, I think Prime Minister Modi is in the 6th year of office, and he has cultivated personal friendships with a lot of world leaders. Pretty much the entire G20, which is present there, barring one or two newly elected presidents or prime ministers, know him very intimately, and that helps. And end of the day, he is coming with a resounding mandate behind him. He has won a huge democratic election, and he's highly respected on the world stage. He's giving new ideas, and he's supporting the right initiatives for collective action. Because G20, frankly, the multilateral basis for it has been significantly weakened by Trump, and also the rise of other populists in Europe who are totally opposed to any kind of multilateral engagement. So I think India in many ways the drivers for it. And so one, the personal chemistry with the leaders, and second, at points of convergence. For example, we want climate finance. to transition to green technologies, and Trump has completely disavowed any US obligations towards that. But the Europeans are saying the climate change is significant and important, and we must continue to espouse the objectives of reducing greenhouse emissions, and they are keen on climate finance, although they cannot put up as much money as the US does. The Canadians are in favor of it. So when Prime Minister speaks one-on-one with leaders like Macron or Merkel, or with Justin Trudeau, these are the points that we're going to raise where we have common interests with these other players. So G20 as a whole looks fragmented, especially because of Trump, but there could be 10 or 15 out of 20 that are agreeing on one issue. And therefore it's very important for Prime Minister to leverage this. So one-on-ones with his friends, with his dear friends as he calls them, like Shinzo Abe, like Moon Jae-in of South Korea, the Saudi Crown Prince. All these are very, very important for us, because end of the day, issue-based, we have to build smaller coalitions with like-minded players.
Dr. Chaulia, please quickly, I want to take in your closing comments as well, and after that a quick word from Professor Muni. Dr. Chaulia.
Sana, G20, needs a revival and rejuvenation because of the crisis of multilateralism and the, looming clouds of protectionism and possible economic slowdown globally. Prime Minister alluded to that today. And I think it's a time for India to show leadership. Emerging powers have to fill the vacuum created by the Western populism and withdrawal from global leadership. So it's very important. I think this is an important stepping stone for us. We should continue the work behind the scenes. G20 is well institutionalized. There's a Sherpas, there are ministerials, and this will continue. The Japanese presidency is there for the whole year. And together with Japan, we should be proposing new initiatives and pushing forward all the issues that will ultimately solve the global governance problems that the planet faces, because ultimately
so in essence continue the same trajectory. Sure, and also we'll see what happens in the days, weeks and months in which a number of bilateral meetings are lined up, which will be carry forward, a sort of carry forward from the G20 summit. Thank you all of you very much for joining me on this very enriching discussion.